Emily and Liam met at the university when they were both taking part in a theater production. She was a beautiful and self-confident girl who was used to attention, and he was a modest guy with a subtle sense of humor. Their characters complemented each other like the sun and the shadow. They quickly fell in love, and it seemed that there was nothing between them that could stand in the way. Life is rarely that simple. A few years later, as the two began to build their careers, their relationship was hit first. Emily worked on a large project in a creative agency, constantly under stress, and Liam received an offer to work in another city. The distance and various graphs began to slowly break their connection. One evening, when Emily was late at work, her colleague Alex offered to have dinner together. Dinner was innocent, but over time, Alex became the person Emily turned to for support. Liam felt that she was moving away, but couldn't find the words to discuss it. When Liam arrived for the weekend to see Emily, there was a first serious conflict between them. "You're always busy," Liam said. "I come here, and you don't even find time to be with me. Do you think I feel okay?" Emily replied. "I have life here, work. Not everything revolves around you." This quarrel left a bitter residue in both of them. The climax came when Liam found out that Emily had spent a few evenings with Alex. She admitted that they had dinner and talked together, but assured that there was nothing between them. However, Liam couldn't believe it. "You trusted him, not me," he said. "It's worse than any betrayal." Emily couldn't find the words either. They decided to take a break in the relationship, but both were in pain. A few months later, Liam returned to the city to visit a mutual friend. He didn't expect to see Emily at the party, but their eyes met, and all the images instantly surfaced. "I'm sorry," she said, approaching him. "But you have to understand, I'm confused, but I never stopped loving you." "And I wasn't perfect," replied Liam. "We both made mistakes, but if it can still be fixed." Their conversation lasted several hours, and for the first time in a long time, they were honest with each other. This moment was the beginning of a new stage. They decided to work on their problems together, not separately. They had to rebuild trust, but this time they knew that love was worth the effort. The following months were a test for Emily and Liam. They agreed to communicate more, talk about their emotions and find time for each other. But the process of restoring trust was not easy. Emily decided to stop all contacts with Alex, realizing that their friendship was more harmful than helpful. Liam also took a step forward. He agreed with the employer to work remotely to stay closer to Emily. The first meetings after their reconciliation were tense. Each conversation reminded me of how close they were to breaking up. But they also began to remember why they loved each other. Liam began to cook for Emily her favorite dishes, and she tried to spend more time with him, even on the most stressful days. One evening they decided to go out of town together, to a small house on the shore of the lake. It was Liam's idea, to get away from work and everyday problems. In the silence of nature, they found harmony again. "I didn't think we could get through all this," Emily said, sitting next to him on the shore. "I didn't think we could get through all this." "Me too," Liam replied. "But now I'm sure we can handle anything." However, not everything was perfect. Liam still had doubts, and he sometimes caught himself thinking about whether Emily would do what had happened before again. She was afraid that Liam would never completely forget that period. One day, when they were cooking dinner together, Liam suddenly said, "Do you regret what happened?" Emily froze for a moment, but then replied, "I'm sorry I hurt you. But at the same time, I'm grateful that we've been through this. It made me realize how important you are to me." Liam nodded. "I'm grateful too. But we need to keep working on it." Since then, they have started going to joint therapy sessions to understand the deeper causes of their problems. This helped them not only understand each other better, but also strengthen their connection. Over time, trust began to recover. Liam was no longer afraid to be alone, knowing that Emily kept her promises. And she learned not to hide her feelings and be open. A year after their reconciliation, Liam made a marriage proposal. It happened while traveling to the same house on the lake. "We went through the storm," he said, kneeling in front of her, "and I know we can get through everything else. Are you ready to become my wife?" Emily couldn't hold resters. "Yes, Liam. I'm ready." This story became a lesson for them. True love is not always perfect, but it is stronger than any difficulty if both are ready to fight for it. After the engagement, Emily and Liam began to prepare for the wedding. It was a time of joy, but also new challenges, because planning such an important day required a lot of effort and compromises. Emily wanted a big wedding in a modern style, with bright decorations and numerous guests. Liam dreamed of something simple and cozy, a small holiday only for the closest ones. Their disputes over this have begun to gain momentum. "Why can't you understand that this is an important day for both of us?" Emily said irritably one evening. "I want this holiday to be unforgettable. And I want it to be about us, not about the crowd of people we rarely see," Liam replied. The quarrel lasted for hours, but eventually they realized that they were again starting to lose what they had built with such difficulty. Emily decided to reduce the scale of her plans, and Liam agreed to some of her ideas. The wedding was a compromise, but both were satisfied. A new beginning. On the wedding day, they exchanged vows that were not perfectly fictional, but were real. Liam began, "I promise to always be there, even when it's hard. We've been through a lot, and I know we'll handle everything else." Emily said, "I promise to be honest and always remember that you are my best friend and partner. My heart will always be yours." Their words moved all those present. On this day, they not only celebrated their love, but also celebrated overcoming the difficulties that made them stronger. Life after the wedding. After the wedding, their life did not become perfect, but they learned to cope with difficulties together. When conflicts arose, they remembered what they had already gone through, and this helped to find a common language. One day, a few years later, when Emily and Liam were walking together with their little son in the park, Emily stopped and looked at Liam. "I thought our happiness would always be fragile," she said. "And I knew it would be strong if we wanted it," he smiled. Their story showed that love is not perfection and not the absence of problems. It is a willingness to fight for relationships, to build them day by day, even when it seems that the storm will never end. They went their way through the storm and found the true light together. Emily and Liam's lives continued to consist of small victories and overcoming difficulties. Their son, whom they named Noah, became the center of their world. Together they rejoiced at his first steps, laughed at his funny words and shared their dreams with him. However, with the arrival of the child, new challenges were added. Emily began to feel overwhelmed: career, household chores, caring for Noah. She often stayed up late to finish her work, and in the morning she was exhausted. Liam also tried to be helpful, but he didn't always understand exactly how to help. One evening, when Emily almost cried for the third time in a week because of the little things, he realized that something had to be changed. "We're moving away again," he told her quietly as they put Noah to bed together. "I know," Emily replied. "But I just don't know how to keep up with it all." Liam took her hands. "We'll make it, but only together. Maybe it's time to reconsider our priorities." This conversation was a turning point for them. They decided to devote more time to each other and their families. Liam began to help Emily with household chores and took care of Noah more often. They also agreed to find time only for themselves once a week, leaving their son with his grandmother. New dreams. One evening, when Noah fell asleep, Liam and Emily were sitting on the terrace with cups of tea. "What do you think will happen next?" Emily asked. "I think we'll be happy if we continue to work on it," Liam replied. "I have an idea." "Which one?" "Let's move out of town. We will buy a small house with a garden where Noah can play and we can find more peace." Emily thought about it. And although her work was closely related to life in the city, she realized that this idea could be a new beginning. A few months later, they found the house of their dreams. The house became a real refuge for Emily, Liam, and their little Noah. They moved in the spring when everything around was blooming. In the first days after moving, their family was busy with arrangement, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture and dreaming about how to plant flowers in their garden. One day, while they were walking in the backyard, Liam took out a package of flower bulbs from the box. "What is it?" Emily was surprised. "They are tulips," he replied with a smile. "Your favorites?" "Red, of course." Emily hugged him in emotion. "Do you remember?" "How can I forget?" Liam said. "It was part of our beginning. Let's make them a symbol of our new life here." They planted tulips together at the entrance to the house, and Noah happily dug next to him with his baby scoop. Tulips were a reminder that, despite all the difficulties, their love always found the way to renewal. New traditions. Life outside the city brought a new rhythm and peace. Liam began to work more at home, which allowed him to spend more time with Noah. Emily learned to let go of some of her duties and allowed herself to enjoy the moments. They spent the evenings together, baking homemade bread, reading books by the fireplace or playing hide-and-seek with Noah. Every Sunday they introduced a new tradition: family walks in the woods near the house. It became a kind of meditation for them. They breathed fresh air, laughed and planned for the future. New tests. Life always brings a test. One day Emily learned that her work in the city required a constant presence. She was faced with a choice: either abandon the project that was her dream, or start traveling to the city again every day. "I don't want to lose this balance again," she told Liam. "But it's a great opportunity for me." Liam listened to her carefully. "We'll manage if that's really what you want," he said. "But only if you promise not to dissolve at work as before." Emily agreed. She started traveling to the city several times a week, and the rest of the days worked remotely. It was not easy, but now that she knew that her family was always there, and it gave her strength. Happiness in simple things. One morning, when spring bloomed again, Emily went out into the yard and saw the red tulips they had planted a year ago. They blossomed brightly and proudly, reminding us of how far they had come together. Liam walked out to her with a cup of coffee in his hands, and Noah ran out with a smile behind him. "Look, Mom! Flowers!" he shouted happily. Emily turned to Liam and said, "I can't imagine my life without you. You and Noah are the best thing that happened to me." "And you are our heart," Liam replied, hugging her. It was their happiness, not perfect, but real. They went through difficulties, lost and found each other again, but always knew, together they can overcome anything. The tulips near the house remained a symbol of their love, which did not break, but only strengthened. Years passed, and Emily and Liam's lives gradually changed. Their son Noah grew up, and now he has become an active and inquisitive boy. He had his own dream to become an archaeologist, because he liked to dig up something in the garden and imagine that he was finding ancient treasures. Emily and Liam continued to support each other in everything. But as it often happens, new difficulties have arisen over time. Emily began to notice that Liam had become more withdrawn and talked less about his thoughts. She was worried about it, but she didn't know how to start the conversation properly. Misunderstanding. One evening, when Noah had already gone to bed, Emily sat next to Liam in the living room. "Is something wrong, Liam?" she asked. "You have been looking anxious lately." "It's okay," he answered briefly, not looking at her. Emily felt that a wall had appeared between them, which had been growing for several months. She decided not to press anymore, but the anxiety remained. After a few weeks, the tension reached its peak. Liam admitted that he was worried about the job. His company lost a large client, and he was afraid that he might lose his position. "I didn't want to burden you with this," he said. "You're already working and doing a lot, Noah." "Liam, we are partners," Emily replied. "If you don't tell me about your problems, how can I help?" This conversation was difficult, but it opened the way to understanding. They agreed that they would no longer keep everything in themselves, even if it seems that it is for the good of another. New horizons. Liam began to look for other job opportunities, and although it was not easy, he found a position in a local company that allowed him to be closer to his family. Meanwhile, Emily received a promotion, but decided to reduce the number of days she spends in the city to have more time for her family. One day, as the whole family was walking in the garden, Noah suddenly ran to a flower bed with red tulips, which had already become a real symbol of their home. "Look, Mom, Dad. I found something," he shouted happily, digging in the ground. Emily and Liam walked up to him and saw that Noah was holding an old, dusty coin in his hands. "This is a real treasure." Emily laughed. "Now I will definitely become an archaeologist," Noah exclaimed. Future. Emily and Liam looked at their son, who was making plans for their future with a sparkle in his eyes, and understood that all the difficulties they had overcome together were worth this moment. Their family became stronger and their love deeper. Red tulips bloomed every spring, reminding us that, despite all the storms, they always found their way to each other. And now a new generation grew up in this house, learning to love, dream and be together, no matter what. Years continued to fly. Noah grew up and became a young man who since childhood dreamed of exploring the world. With the support of his parents, he entered the university to study archaeology. The son's departure was an exciting moment for Emily and Liam. Their house became quieter, but they were proud of him and knew that they did everything right. New chapters of life. After Noah left, Emily and Liam began to devote more time to each other. They recalled their dreams, which they once put off in the background because of family responsibilities. Liam wanted to renew his love for photography, which he was engaged in his youth. Emily, in turn, began to take drawing lessons, always dreaming of learning to convey the beauty of nature on canvas. "Why don't we make an exhibition?" Liam jokingly suggested one evening when they were looking at his photos and Emily's first works. "It would be great," she smiled. "But for now, I just want us to enjoy it together." Discovery of a new. One day they decided to take a trip to Europe, something that has always remained their dream. Liam photographed the picturesque streets of Italy, the ancient castles of France, and Emily kept a diary, making sketches of the places that inspired them. During the journey, they felt young again, returned to their origins and remembered why they fell in love with each other. Returning home. When they returned home, their red tulips bloomed again. It has become a symbol of the fact that life always goes on, and there is always room for a new beginning. One morning, sitting by the tulip bed, Emily said, "What do you think awaits us next?" "I don't know," Liam replied, "but I'm sure it will be something beautiful." Emily took his hand, and they sat in silence for a long time, looking at the flowers. Family circle. A few years later, Noah returned home with great news. He brought his bride with him, a girl named Sophia. She impressed Emily and Liam with her kindness and sincerity. Their son's wedding took place in the same yard where Liam and Emily planted their tulips many years ago. Now an adult, Noah stood next to Sophia, and his parents proudly watched the new chapter in their lives. "Now our house will be part of their story," Emily whispered, holding Liam's hand. "And part of the future," he replied. Red tulips continued to bloom every spring, recalling the power of love that went through trials but did not lose its beauty. After the wedding, Noah and Sophia decided to live near Emily and Liam. The newlyweds often came to visit, helped in the garden and shared their plans for the future. Sophia, like Emily once, loved the simple joys of life, and Noah kept in his heart a childish passion for excavations and adventures. One day, when they were all sitting together for dinner, Sophia, smiling, said, "We have news." Emily and Liam looked at the newlyweds impatiently. "We are expecting a child," she said. This news brought a wave of joy into their lives. Emily and Liam felt the same excitement they once experienced themselves while waiting for Noah's birth. A new round of happiness. The baby was born in the spring when their red tulips had just begun to bloom. Sophia and Noah named their son Henry, after Sophia's grandfather. Now their house was again filled with laughter, children's games, and the expectation of new achievements. Emily often spent time with little Henry, reading him books under an old tree in the garden. Liam, for his part, showed his grandson how to properly hold the camera when he became interested in photography. Tulips as a symbol. When Henry was 5 years old, he first helped his grandparents plant red tulips. "These are our special flowers," Emily said, hugging her grandson. "They always remind us of the importance of loving and protecting those around us." Henry nodded seriously. "Then I'll plant even more tulips so that we can always be together," he said. Emily and Liam smiled. They knew that their love, which had gone through trials, was now an inheritance that they passed on to their son and grandson. Life is cycles. Years passed, but red tulips always remained the central part of their home. Every spring, the whole family gathered to plant flowers together, celebrating a new cycle of life. And while time took its toll, Emily and Liam, sitting on a bench near the tulips, always held hands, as on the day when they first realized that their love would endure everything. "It was a good way," Emily once said, looking at the sunset. "And it goes on," Liam replied. Their tulips continued to bloom every year, symbolizing not only their history, but also the power of love that is passed down through generations. When Emily and Liam were already in their 70s, their lives were filled with quiet coziness. Their house became a place where children and grandchildren constantly came. Noah and Sophia now had 2 children, Henry and Mia. Grandchildren spent almost all their holidays with their grandparents, helping in the garden, walking in the woods and listening to stories about how Liam and Emily overcame all the difficulties of their lives. One autumn morning, Emily woke up from the warm ray of sunshine that penetrated through the window of their bedroom. She looked at Liam, who was still asleep, and thought about how much they had experienced together. She knew that their days were slowly approaching the sunset, but there was only gratitude in her heart. "You and I have built something beautiful," she whispered, touching his hand. Large family. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the family had a festive evening. Everyone gathered in a large garden near the house, which has already become a place of family history. Henry, who was already 20, prepared a small photo album in which he collected the best moments of their lives: the wedding, Noah's birth, the first years in the house, traveling to Europe, and, of course, red tulips. "Grandma, Grandpa, this is for you," he said, passing the album to Emily and Liam. Turning the pages, Emily couldn't hold back her tears. "It's not just our memories," she said. "This is how we kept each other, no matter what." Last spring. When the next spring came, Liam could no longer work in the garden on his own. He was weak, but he still found the strength to sit by the tulip bed and watch his grandchildren and Emily plant new flowers. "This year they will bloom best," he once said. "You always said that," Emily replied, smiling. "Tulips have really blossomed like never before." One morning, when Emily brought Liam a cup of tea, he said softly, "Thank you for everything, Emily. You were my universe." That day he passed away surrounded by his flowers and his large family. The legacy of love. After Liam's death, Emily decided to preserve his memory because the red tulips were always their symbol. Every year, when spring came, she planted new flowers with her grandchildren and children. When Emily also passed away a few years later, she was buried next to Liam in the same garden they created together. The family decided to continue their tradition, and now every spring a flower bed of red tulips bloomed, reminding of the love that was able to overcome all trials. It wasn't just Emily and Liam's story, it was a story about how important it is to appreciate every moment with those you love. Their home, their garden, and their tulips have become a symbol of love for generations that will always bloom like these beautiful flowers.